All right, so we will call the meeting to order at 6:06. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Correspondence, visitors, and public comments. Attendance. Anybody receive any correspondence from the board? Right along to agenda review. Any agenda amendments for tonight? I have none. Do you have any?
No, I do not.
Next is the approval of the minutes from the July 12th meeting. Motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the July 12th. Board meeting minutes.
Toby is the first. Is there a second? Peter is a second. Any discussion on the July 12th minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the July 12th minutes, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Abstentions? Terry, is anyone able to see Terry's vote online?
She disappeared.
Admitted again.
Okay, so the motion carries 7-0.
The only thing is it has Rennick being absent. And Rennick, were you there? You came late, but you attended the short board meeting, correct? Or did you just come to the retreat?
No, I mean, I got there late, the last like two, I got there and it was called the journey.
Oh, so it's fair enough to say that. I just wanted to make sure it was a fair represent, because I would have made that change after.
All right, next on the agenda, we're into business items, check warrants. Read the warrants.
Accounts payable is $468,100.71. Payroll checks $37,142.66. Payroll other disbursements, direct deposit federal and state taxes is $1,403,724.85. Payroll deductions, which is health, dental, retirement, dues, etc., is $843,025.94 for a total of $2,751,994.16.
Motion to approve the check warrants is read.
For the month of July.
For the month of July.
So move.
Dawn is the first. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Rennick is the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of approving check warrants as read, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstentions, motion carries 7-0. All right, next we have food service account surplus purchase. Can you present me this one?
Yes. So I'm back again, as I promised, with another proposal to spend down the remaining surplus that we are required to spend. That was the surplus that was remaining as of last June. We will be having another surplus that I'll come back to you with again when we reconcile to this following June, this recent June. But this one is for walk-in coolers. I think I had kind of mentioned that at the last meeting too, when you approved some other items. This would eat down the remaining $125,000. Basically, we had EEI evaluate all of our walk-in needs, and these are the two that were prioritized is, for the Highgate Elementary freezer and cooler, and then the Swan freezer and cooler. At this time, they would get basically all new mechanical units. So it would be basically the shell would remain, but everything else that's mechanical and coolant related would be replaced. Facility directors are on board with this. They understand that in the other two schools, Franklin and FU, they would be next on the list, hopefully. Just looking for action on that.
So Laura, if we didn't have EEI, how would this have gone?
Probably the facility directors would have tried to work with different vendors to try to solicit repair needs, and then we would have met and tried to prioritize those. EEI offered to orchestrate that. Honestly, their connection with the vendors that they're already working with in some of our other projects allows this to happen in a timeline that is more attractive.
Maybe if this is not the appropriate time to say this, tell me I'm off task, Mr. Chair. It does concern me in some of our situations that arise. And I see more of them in the future, that we're paying more money because EEI is not doing all this just for the goodness of their heart. Now, I realize there are some things our staff can't do, and I know we're booked solid in the summer. It's just, and maybe I'm off base, but it seems that since EEI's come on, it's easier to go to EEI and say, go ahead and do this, rather than how we might have done it 3 years ago. I don't know. I'm going to support this because I want to spend the money. I think the pool is a great investment, but I've seen some other situations when we were at MVU doing a walkthrough with staff there that, there are a lot of things we can do given enough help. Maybe we don't have enough employees or enough time, but anyway, just wanted to raise that issue as we look at projects. Just want to make sure we aren't just pumping a lot of stuff to EEI and paying that upcharge.
Yeah, that might be a good topic for the facilities committee to dig a little more into, see if we've got to check the cost benefit analysis of that.
And talk to the facilities director. They may be very happy. Okay, thank you.
All right, so at this point, we're looking for a motion on this proposal. Does anyone want to make a motion?
And I will second it because I think this is an important project that we need to move forward.
So how would you like to phrase that motion, Peter, that not to exceed?
Replacement components for walk-in freezers not to exceed $128,373.
So Peter's made a motion to approve the recommendation to replace the walk-in freezer coolers with Highgate Swanton Winters, not to exceed $128,373. Don, second. Any discussion on this?
So Laura, can you just clarify for anyone listening, this, and it doesn't have to be long, basically this is carryover money from the month program?
Surplus from last June that we had to write a corrective action plan on how we were going to spend. We've done that partially, but this is the remainder of that. We will have more surplus that's being generated as of this next June though, so we will have to continue to follow the plan. You're only allowed to carry 3 months of surplus. We're doing well about that.
I think, where is this Swanton Elementary? Is this the central school building or the back building?
That's the elementary building. No, no, that's not the the central school, they call it.
Oh, yeah.
So the question was, we're found to be the two most serious schools in this time.
Heidi's is actually not working. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, we will vote this time. Those in favor of approving the replacements not to exceed $128,373, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Can you hear me?
Motion carries 7-0.
Can you hear me? I said aye.
Next, continue with Laura, business manager reports.
Okay, so I tried to include a lot of what's been going on in the business office, but obviously to read that. But I did want to highlight that we had a server issue. I explained this to Devin, but back on July 6th, at a very unfortunate time, we had a server crash at MVU, which was a server that was related to our financial management and HR program. We had that happen a couple of years ago, and we thought we had rectified the problem with our tech team. When we actually lost some data when it went down, and we had purchased a new server and then went to contract with a company called Tech Group to make sure that our data was also secure offsite on another server that was then backed up with an offsite company. Apparently, because we authenticate our financial management software with an Active Directory, the Active Directory has to be housed on a different server, and that's the server that had been aged and apparently failed. That was new information to the business office. And so, but that happened on a holiday week, first payroll of the new fiscal year. Our tech director had just gotten done. What else was happening? A new chart of accounts, a new employee portal. What else? I don't remember. So we spent, Sylvia Gagne, thank goodness, was only got an hour of sleep. So that night, because we only had one more day to get the ACH file to the bank, we were able to work with Infinite Visions, which is our software company, get them on board about 11 o'clock at night, along with the tech group, and get them talking. And by the morning, we were able to get back online, but we lost about 15 hours of time that we didn't have. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of backup. If you don't have servers backed up and you don't have data backed up and there is a weak link, there is no backup plan. We pay, this payroll in particular had 5 different payrolls in it because we pay hourly, summer pays, salaried. We had certain days that fall within one fiscal year, old rate. It's just very, very complicated. So it was about as bad as it could be. We realized the weakness, so we are investigating every single option. At this point, we are back up and running. We got people paid. I have some thanks there to people that I'd like to say their name because they literally went without sleep for multiple days. No, that's not an exaggeration. Sylvia Gagne, Sue Day, Michelle Stanley, and Lisa Way went above and beyond. I mean, Sylvia got an hour of sleep that night and was right back at it the next day, problem solving. We literally ended up doing payroll from a server room at MVU on Sylvia Gagne's server computer because that's what we could access. So again, we thought we had fixed it before. We are now investigating even offsite hosting. With the company, we actually got a quote for that. It's about $20,000, but between our contracts with the tech group and buying servers at $6,000-7,000, Sylvia's time, the tech team's time, it may be more cost effective to just have it housed in the cloud through the financial management company. So we're investigating a bunch of things that I highlighted there. I will be bringing that back to you. We should have a meeting on Thursday. Right now, we are backed up. Our system is backed up. Thought it was backed up before for Active Directory. In fact, it wasn't working. It is now. I clarified that again with Sylvia today. So I will be back in a couple of weeks with a proposal, probably saying this is what we need to do. It's just not something that can go down. That was a small payroll for us, but typically we're paying 600 people. People need to get paid. And even our tax liability, one day of paying our payroll taxes late could be $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. So we can't go down. So we're working on it. I apologize for that happening. We didn't realize there was a weak link. We do now. We're working on it.
Yes, one to highlight, Laura.
Not really. Lots of thanks to Mike. Sorry. There's a lot here. And I do encourage you to read it because I just think our team has been working exceptionally hard, especially this last little while with all the things we're handling, a new employee portal. I mean, just so much. I just want to have a huge shout out to the people in our office because they're working really hard.
The business office has been working around the clock since the end of school, between conversions and the payroll chart of accounts change. It was just one difficult thing after another, and then for the server. And when Laura's texting me in the night saying it's still not up, and I'm saying, but we fixed it, right? This was not supposed to happen. So it was another of the servers, not the same server as before. So
Laura, under ESSER grants, maybe you don't want to talk about it now.
Sure.
But under ESSER grants, it says we fully expended FY22.
Yep.
And 40% of one and 40% of ESSER two.
Yep.
So what is the balance of ESSER two? Is that what we're talking with for the Franklin project? Or-
No. So the balance, and I tried to highlight it here, but I think now's a good time to talk about it, if that's okay. We are continuing the remaining 60% of ESSER two. Basically, we are going to continue to do support the salaries and benefits that we've been supporting. I tried to highlight some of those things here. Things like summer programming support staff, additional custodians, we have BCBA, network administrator, tutoring, we have engagements and truancy, a social worker, some intervention positions. We've made a decision that we'll continue to fund those because their account codes are already in there, all the deductions are going to those. That should then deplete SR2 by the end of this school year, or potentially throughout the summer. It depends on the tutoring needs and some of the intervention, but most of those positions
So
are
you
filled.
know, so you know basically the dollar amount you need.
Right, there's about 1.4 left in SR2 right now. ARP ESSER though, we are already starting to utilize this year. We've made a decision that any new initiatives or anything that is a purchase service and not salaries and benefits, it's kind of clean to do it that way, new contracts. For things like the math curriculum that we decided, and that was in our ARP ESSER plan, and we've done stakeholder engagement on, those are being funded right off with ARP ESSER. That's a 7.9 million that we haven't touched yet. It's still sitting there, but as of July 1, we've started utilizing that for those things. That is where the Franklin project, the 4.1, has been part of that plan. Yeah.
And when you were talking about shout outs, did you say Sue Day?
Yes,
Because I was trying to follow along. I saw Lisa Way, Sylvia Long, and I thought you said Sue Day.
Sue gets up at 4 a.m. and she was in the server room doing payroll at 11 p.m. So.
So is there anything that recognition of the board can do? I know at work they have above and beyond, and I'm not suggesting that we do gift cards, because I'm sure a lot of people go above and beyond, but is there like a letter from the board or anything? Would it be appreciated if the board did something up and said, you know, we really appreciate the extra efforts that you did in this crisis and this kind of thing.
It gives me goosebumps to hear you say that,
Yeah.
honestly, because I've been telling Julie, Julie sent a very heartfelt thank you to them, but I think not every employee would do what they did for that 3 days, so.
these women were sick to their stomachs that some of our folks that rely on every penny might not get paid on the day they expect the money to hit the bank, right? That makes a huge difference to most people. And they did this because of those people.
I don't know. I don't think most of these people are under a union or anything, right? What if, something to consider, maybe give them a day off, or they do it in the summer, or, you know, one of the holidays, or sometime, just say between now and the end of December, if there's a day, one extra day off, it's not vacation, personal, I don't know. I know at VSBA, and I'm not saying VSBA did things right, because we don't know some things right, but we gave, because we had some things that need to be done, people did them, and the board said that. Let's give them some time off. Long shopping trip for them. But anyway, I like your idea, Peter. I just don't know what to do, but that'd be another thing.
Honestly, I think the acknowledgement is probably
I know.
the biggest thing.
Okay.
Yeah, they were so thankful that Julie had sent an email and actually acknowledged that they had done that, so.
I would personally like to do this letter, and we can all sign it, and give them a floating holiday to take at their choice. I mean, it's really-
That works for me. It's above and beyond their normal job, and I think it's not going to work. So it was very important, and I think rewarding them with time is appropriate in this situation, because that's what they did was more time.
I don't think we need a motion on that.
We'll take care of that. Do you want me to draft something and send it to the board to review, or do you want to draft? something?
Yeah, why don't I draft something that way it really is from the
Yeah,
board,
that's
and, and we'll arrange to get everybody to sign that thing.
So are we just thinking those four that were named, or are we thinking this one too?
That's my job. I'm a salary, yeah.
I just.
I'm trying to put people on salary. you know.
Yeah.
Take advantage of it.
I learned that 30 years ago as an administrator, put them on salary.
All right, so I just wanted, just so we knew it was good for.
I would certainly also echo the fact that Laura went above and beyond and was calling me at 11 at night saying, "Like, there's nothing you can do, I'm just telling you." And yeah.
And
People
Julie
have
was sleeping a
sleepless
few mornings, so she was up half the night. working.
I told
I do
Julie
like to-
that
I do
Tim
that,
B is
so
going
we
and getting a
will.
bag of cash and I will sit out front and document the people I give it to because I'm not letting people go without money. Like, that's so
That's
unfair. Yeah.
And I just want to say July 1st is also the time when we roll over, right? So we order everything and we were not able to do that. And Laura was great, kept a really good attitude. Especially when I called her and said, Laura, I'm really sorry, I need this thing ordered. And she was like, yes, I'll do it. You know, so
Again,
it
that's
was
my
very
team
kind.
though. That's the same people. That's
Yeah.
Lisa, Anne Marie and yeah. You're at.
Thank you, Laura, as well.
So Julie will take care of that with Laura.
Any other questions, comments for Laura on the business office? Thank you, Laura. Next item on the agenda is new teacher hires.
So I have a new teacher to bring to you that some of you know. I met with Andrew Godin today. He's going to be the new ag teacher to finally fill that final ag
Oh, wow.
department position. I
Oh,
know.
that's not bad.
And Andrew lives in Franklin, of course, and I'm very excited. I think it's going to be a really good team. And so he's going to be starting the program to get that licensure and working with the team to, I believe his focus is going to be 7th and 8th grade to really bolster that aspect of the program. So I love it when we're able to find local people that we know are committed to our community and to our kids. So we're hoping the best for this new team, because that really is who our new team is.
All right, would like to make a motion?
I'd like to hear about new teacher hires.
Yeah. Don has made the motion to approve new teacher hire as read and go with the ag department. Is there a second? Jen is the second.
Would Joanne second that?
I did not have a chance at all.
Jen got it.
You that actually beat me.
If I could go a little aside, I used to have a very nice email from, I don't know who it was, but they said, please tell the young lady that accompanied you to a meeting, that we would like to have her continue. So it must be you.
Okay,
No.
yeah.
Any discussion on new teacher hire?
I just have one quick, this is a great place to say it, not directly, I'm gonna approve, if it won't favor it, anything. Do we have a directory for board members? I know, like, so I, at any time, could see the list of all MU employees in the ag department.
Every school does it differently.
Right.
And they have a different format. And every year I ask for that, just for phone
Yeah,
extensions and
Yeah,
things like
I don't
that.
want to know that, but
No,
I would love to
but-
know the names
Yes.
of all the people in all our buildings.
I would too. And not that
Yeah,
I don't. Not that I don't, I mean, every new teacher, I know so many, and Bonnie likes to make fun of me when I get the names, people's
Yeah.
first names. confused. But I will always have to look up, gosh, is this teacher, is she teaching 3rd grade or 5th grade?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's Swan. Let me make sure. And I would love there to be a single place where we could go and we could say, here they are. So what I'll do is ask principals to give me what they have, and we'll either it'll be easy enough to share that way, or we'll.
I would really just like to know their name and what they teach.
Yes.
That would be great, because I have conversations with community members saying, like, especially the little kids, like, who should teach you next year? And I used to be able to know all the four
Yeah.
4th grade teachers at Swanton. I don't know that.
Right.
And I don't like that.
And people move around,
Right.
and it's,
I saw Bonnie smiling and nodding, so I think something will come along.
absolutely, that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Discussion on new teacher hires. All those in favor of approving new teacher items presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries 8-0. All right, next we are on to policy adoption. We have 2 policies.
So the first is the role and adoption of school board policies. Toby made a great suggestion that was not part of the model policy, but there had been a note at the end of the model policy because around school boards and procedures. So I added that. Toby, did you get a chance to look at?
Oh, no.
I didn't-
I didn't, I'm sure I'm fine with it. I'm just realizing now I can get to it in the link to the agenda.
The only part I didn't put as, and then the statute, because that is
Yeah.
listed below.
Yeah, that's fine, yeah. Password. Sorry.
So would anyone like to make a motion regarding policy 830, role and adoption of school board policies?
I'll make a
Rack has made a motion to approve that policy. Is there a second?
Carrie, looks like.
Carrie's a second. Any discussion on that policy? Seeing none. All right, all those in favor of approving policy 830, role and adoption of school board policies, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries 8-0. All right, on to the next policy, which is C-33, student assessments.
We did not get any feedback on that. Again, I took the model policy and worked with Kosha to update it so it represents it. A lot of, by 2005, schools shall have. So we made those changes to reflect the role of the curriculum director, which wasn't in there, and the fact that we all have local assessment plans in place and so on. So since we did that, no other comments.
All right, anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion, but before I do, just want to ask, is it just kind of be like a sort of verbal thing in terms of when we get, like at what point in the years that we get sort of like revision in terms of like how things are going and what we're doing? So like annually, biannually, quarterly, or is that just sort of
Report
like?
outs, that I think is coming up later in the agenda, but yes, according to this policy, I believe it's at least annually in the policy. And we're gonna be discussing as a board what else we want.
I think the general sentiment is that we want that really as frequently as possible with when assessments are done to see the results. All right, so Rennick is the first. Is there a second? Joanne's the second. All right, any other discussion on this policy? Seeing none, those in favor of approving policy C-33 student assessment as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstentions, motion carries 8-0. All right, next section of the agenda, presentation, discussion items, facilities project update. First, that's someone from the facilities committee that's leading that, or?
I'm gonna start, and Laura, do you want me to project, to share, do the sharing of you? I will share my screen.
So this is next week in Franklin.
That's what we're looking at.
No, that's what we're looking at. This is for next week.
So the facility committee met and really wanted to make sure that before we move forward with next steps around our proposal in our ARP ESSER plan, which as Don was asking before, is the grant funding where we're receiving just under $8 million, and we've had some stakeholder engagement. So we wanted to inform the board of the steps that we've had and the prioritization that we've done. And then we will be discussing it again and hopefully for action at the August 16th meeting. Peter is going to be, as a facility task force member, doing some heavy lifting with the slides. Joyce has been very integral in developing the PowerPoint. I will be doing these introductory slides, and also Laura will be sharing some of the fiscal information. And we really want to try and do the questions and comments at the end so that we can get through the general information and then have a robust discussion about it. Our objective is really to make sure we share with the full MVSD board and the community the Franklin Instructional Space Project proposal, where it stands, explain how this proposal was prioritized and chosen, explain the ARP ESSER funding source, gather any questions, comments for feedback, and then really prepare for action at the August 16th board meeting. First, we're going to explain the whole facility planning process. The facility committee has been doing a lot of heavy lifting with all of these projects. Reflect upon recent facility projects across all of our schools so that you can see much of the work that's been going on in all of our schools. Explain the essential needs that arose in Franklin. Describe the space project recommendation. Explain the project proposal design. Outline the ARP ESSER funding source, as well as the many rules, regulations, and timeline that come with that. It's federal money. There are a lot of strings and regulations with it. We're going to share the proposed timeline, outline next steps, and then have a discussion and questions.
All right, that brings us to the prioritization process. So we remember back in March of 2020, that's when the pandemic hit our schools and we closed schools, starting this process. So fall of that year, 2020, we put together the MVSD facility task force. So it is made up of the 3 board members, which are currently Toby, Don, and myself. The facility directors, which are Steve Reynolds from Franklin, newly hired Stephanie Gagne from Highgate, and Jason Butler is both Swan and MVU. And of course, Superintendent Julie and Business Manager is Laura. So what we've been working on is short and long-term needs. So we've been discussing and planning and revisiting these constantly to see where we're at. And if you remember back in December of 2020, we came to an agreement with EEI as our performance contractor. Through EEI, we did a facility assessment of all our MVSD schools. We did that in 2021. From that, we had some large scale facility upgrade cost matrix provided in May of 2021. We also pre-K and district office project investigation. And we did some stakeholder engagement with that, and you see the cost of that was $12.5 million. Never really got any legs behind that. So now we have the prioritization process established, which we did in January. So goals or what we're trying to do is have safe, healthy, and secure schools. Make sure we have enough instructional space in all our schools. Try to create equitable opportunities in our schools. That doesn't mean equal or the same. It just means we're giving, hopefully providing the same opportunities for our kids. The same, similar opportunities doesn't mean equal. Doesn't mean each thing is the same. Obviously, we have unique schools, unique towns, and we're keeping that, but also trying to make sure we have equitable education. and also the number of students served. Existing funding, expiration considerations, so the Highgate bond, which was approved right when we merged into the new district, that will be expiring in March of 2023. The ARP ESSER funds that we're looking at for the Franklin project is expired in September of 2024, and the HVAC grant is 2020. So, identified immediate priorities. So the HVAC, which we have already done a lot of work in, especially in this school. So we're also the Franklin instructional space needs, which we're going to be talking about tonight. And also we're going to look at the Babcock school assessments. So what we can do to help there. So,
Even before you leave that, Laura, has EEI given us a timeline when they think they can work it out in their schedule?
They have, it's going to be starting soon. We just received the sole source letter. So we know we have now a funding source. We can use the ESSER 2 or the ARP ESSER dollars. It's been approved by the agency of ed. So that took a month to do, but we're ready now. Yep.
'Cause I knew they were very busy and at one time. They were.
Yeah, I think there's some lulls that they're gonna take advantage of. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Peter.
So we'll just do a quick brief of the projects that we've done in our schools. We'll start with Franklin, and this is not an exhaustive list, but try to hit some of the highlights of some of the improvements we've made in our schools. The Franklin boiler upgrade, as we remember, we've got new boilers, and we have 2 of them now, and we also converted the fuel to propane. We updated the HVAC control retrofit, air sealing insulation, phone system upgrade, gym floor resurfacing, window replacement and safety film. PA system was replaced, fire alarm system was replaced. We had new kitchen equipment, duct and coil cleaning, and the playground project, which was also part of that was funded by local fundraising. If we look at Highgate, again, HVAC controls upgraded. The parking lot was resurfaced along with the stormwater project. I believe that was all one and the same project. Phone system upgrade. The white building, half the roof was replaced. The brick building had roof repair. Power generator to pump. Library floor replacement. Asbestos abatement, sewer discharge pump replacement, fire door replacement on the south side, and the front office renovation. Which brings us to Swanton Elementary School, classroom renovation and abatement, garage renovation project, which you remember. They also had a playground project, new playground equipment, phone system upgrade, Babcock plumbing, central copier room expansion, tile and carpet replacement in the greenhouse, boiler flue piping, the scoreboard replacement in the central gym, and ducting.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
You were talking about the playground project being funded in Franklin by part of the community.
Yeah, I
The
know
Swan one is fully community.
it was fully community.
Fully
I
community.
know that. was a
Thank you,
big
Terry.
project
That
here.
was for a question mark on that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I remember that as well.
Yeah.
Which brings us to MVU. So we're looking at the roof replacement phase 1. So we're doing 1 pot at a time, and I believe that is started.
Yes, it's 90% complete.
Okay, excellent. HVAC unit replacement. So we've replaced 20 units. Double wide roof replacement, gym and floor renovation, bleacher project, chiller and pad project, J-Pod transformer replaced, hot lunch equipment upgrade. Talking about the steam cooker project. So the direct digital control upgrade, bank and ditch restoration, track improvements, which we've talked about as well, and equipment, J-Pod epoxy floor, ag building, redoor and cylinder shed, kitchen access, rear door replacement, science classroom renovation, trophy case project, gym PA system upgrade, and kitchen storefront replacement. So as you can see, our building facility directors and their teams have been very busy over the last 4 years with improvements to our schools.
It's the trophy case. Did we put any money into trophy? I know we did it and I know we wanted it, but I thought that was all donated.
$20,000 was donated. There was some remaining funds that came from student activities, principal's discretionary line. So, in regards to the funding source for this proposed project, there is an ESSER funding that's an allocation that's already made to the Missisquoi Valley School District of almost 8 million or 7.9 million. As we think about how much money that is, obviously it's too much to spend on, hiring positions or just supplies and materials. You just can't spend $8 million in that manner, or is it responsible to do so? These funds are part of the requirement is that we're supposed to be focusing some of these funds on a long lasting or something that has a larger impact than supplies and materials or just hiring a position. So that's something we talk about a lot. Obviously, when we utilize the ARP ESSER funding, there's no impact to taxpayers as far as a budget impact or raising their tax rate when they're paying their property taxes. This would require no additional need for bonding. We currently have a bond in the Highgate School that we're paying on the NVU, and I believe we have one more year on the Franklin School bond. And so this obviously is a large enough amount that we would be typically looking for a bond, but that's our investors providing us with an alternative funding source. This is an appropriate use for COVID ARP ESSER funding. We need to tie it to preventing, preparing for, or responding to COVID. It does that we'll get into that later. Also, there's a kind of a checkbox or requirement of identifying underserved population and paying special attention to that population when we're planning for how we're going to spend the ARP ESSER dollars. The period of performance for ARP ESSER ends, as we said before, September 30th, 2024. That sounds like it's far away, but it really is not when we talk about a project this size. I had spoken earlier about the sole source letter. To continue our relationship with EEI, it requires us to basically get a waiver because these are federal funds to speed up the process and allow us to continue that relationship and not have to back up because they've invested 2 years of assessments and investigating our buildings and our needs. And so they know a lot about our buildings, and that helps us right now. Also, the bid process typically takes months. A sole source letter from the agency of Vermont was applied for to allow us to continue that relationship with EEI. We were approved. I just received that letter. So that will help us meet this September 30, 2024 expiration of these funds. One of the ARP ESSER requirements, as we know, is stakeholder engagement or meaningful consultation. This will require, because it is a project, additional stakeholder engagement, and we'll talk more about that later. It has to be very specific and it has to be documented. And so we need to check that box as well. And then also part of this process with ARP ESSER is you have to have not only your normal application and your normal budgeting that happens in an automated system, but we also have to apply for conceptual approval. I'm in the process of working through that application, but then once that's approved, you can finish your design, you can gather more specific information, and then you have to also apply for construction approval. That's before a project can start or break ground. So you're allowed to finish the design, go out to bid, but you cannot touch the project or break ground before you have construction approval. Each of those pieces, if it's anything like the sole source letter, could take 30, 60, 90 days. So it definitely makes that timeline more difficult to accomplish.
Devin, do you want questions now or you want to wait?
We're gonna try to wait till we all go through.
Okay, so this slide is talking to you about the student population. The population in Franklin of students has been really pretty stable over a number of years. Sometimes you have a big class graduate and a smaller class come in, but that happens, and sometimes vice versa. And usually just a handful of kids moving in and moving out. That was all true for many years until the school years 2021 and 21-22. In those 2 school years, we had 36 students move out, or 36 students move in and 12 students move out. So a total of 48 students, which really amounts to really over a third of our student population in our school. And that was a really significant change. And that with increased enrollment, some of the consequences of COVID, we really saw an increased need for all kinds of student support services, from needs and special education to intervention to counseling. And with those need for increased services, we needed spaces for those services. And unfortunately, every space in Franklin is already being used as really effectively and efficiently as we could. That's just not me saying that. That's been several people coming and looking and talking about it, and things
That
we've
was
been.
EEI's assessment as well.
Yes, yeah. And so EEI said that exact phrase, actually, efficiently and effectively as possible. So then, working with EEI, we looked at all of our existing space, what it was currently being used for, what was being shared, how many days a week it was being shared, number of students in each area, and so on, to come up with what we felt were our highest needs. And those were labeled our essential needs. We also looked at needs that were important, and we called them recommendations, but we didn't label them essential. And then there was also wants and wishes. I will say we tried really hard to keep the essential needs to a minimum. We did not even include on this list of essential needs having the nurses area have a wall. Right now we have a portable partition, and that was a recommendation that we said and a need, but we didn't even make that essential. So we tried really hard to make this. We are not looking to have a Taj Mahal. We just really want to meet the needs that we have and be able to meet the kids' existing needs. So first of all, our pre-K and music room, it's actually been labeled since 1992 as music/art, and it's never been a music and art room. So it's pre-K and music currently sharing that room. So it's a 3-year-old program, 4-year-old program, and chorus, band, lessons, and general music classes share that one classroom. And there is no art classroom. Art is on a cart and pushes into the classrooms. The proposal would have a dedicated space for pre-K, and there would be a space for music, and music would share with art. Second, tutoring intervention spaces. We have room 7 that's currently used by our 2 special educators and our 2 interventionists and reading recovery teacher. We also have a room that's using 3 people that are using the old computer lab space. We dismantled the computer lab and put in those portable, really kind of like 5-foot partitions. And so we have 3 people, one doing tutoring, intervention, and sharing that with our tech person, and some storage in there. And we felt it's very important with some of the numbers that we've had to have an additional classroom space. We have no option if we have a class, and in my time in Franklin, we did have a class of 31, and we have no space to have a second classroom when there's a high enrollment in a grade. So we thought that was an essential need. Right now we have last year we had a class of 22 in grade 1. Conference or meeting space, there is no conference room. If we have a meeting that has more than 3 or 4 people, I can fit maybe 4 people from close in my office, but there is no conference room. So if we have a meeting during the school day with parents and it's more than 4 people, we have to close the library. The proposal is to have a designated conference room, and it would be, they called it mid-size, it would be 10 to 12 people. Alternative space, if we have a student that has any type of sensory needs, any type of specific IEP program needs where they are not in the classroom, called for by the maybe OT, PT needs, occupational therapy, sensory needs. We have been using the library office. The library office has also been used by our SLP in some years. This past year, we couldn't even use it for OTPT. It was being used for student programming. And ground level storage, just exactly what I said. We'd have no storage for inside recess equipment, after school program, technology. So those were the things that we identified as essential needs for any type of project.
Okay, so Joyce did a good job of explaining what the issue is, and so now we try to come up with the solution. How do we get there? So we use the central needs. So EEI gave us 3 options that we reviewed in May of 2020. We reviewed them, and we got it down to 2 options with edits and adjustments. We reviewed and narrowed that down to 1 proposal that we'll show you today, and we just approved that in our last meeting in July. So considerations of the new and renovated space are obviously square foot cost, investments to value added, so more bang for the buck. So when we're looking at this project, and I'll read it here and then discuss it, but in large projects, there is not a direct dollar for dollar correlation between reduced square footage and cost savings. So 2 of the ones that we came down to, one had more square footage than the other. The cost difference, which you'll see, was not great, but we were thinking if we don't have enough room, smaller, to go back again and try to look at going larger is going to cost us significantly more than if we do it now. So that's kind of our thinking of why we went with the project that we're suggesting. Projects is in the RFS or fund timeline. It's tight, but we are looking to make that work. It's allowable. Projects allowable under the RFS rules. Project size, timeline, cost fit within this timeline, like I mentioned. Commitment to prioritize project is necessary. We've got to, because it's such a tight timeline, to maximize the funding. If we make a change or if we decide to go in another direction and that's what is decided, then maybe that's the right way to go. But we just need to remember that we probably won't be able to use all of the funding, and we may be leaving money on the table if we don't. And the biggest thing is there's going to be no additional impact on our taxes. So very positive there. So if we go to, it's hard to see on there, I know, but there's 3 basic plans that they originally showed us. And option 1, 2,700 square feet, $2.5 million. We looked at that, and I'll go back to that one in a second. And then there's option 2, 7.5 million, a lot more square footage, and you can see there's 2 different sections where they're adding on the front of both on the front of the building, but on the entryway, like option 1, but also on the west side in the front, you can see they have additional space added there. And then option 3, the biggest option, 15,000 square feet, $14.5 million price range, even more, obviously, in addition. One thing that we found out was there's not many options to add on to this school. You know, on the back of the school, it drops off, the septic's down there, everything's down there. So there's really no way to add additional square footage off the back. Same thing on the side, it's close, the roofs are right there. Sure how far, I don't think it goes far enough where we can put an addition on. Pretty much our only options are off the front. So obviously cost was a big factor with options 2 and 3, and also taking up a lot of space for where our playground is and where a lot of rec time for the students during the school day. So those didn't really work for us. Option one didn't really fit either, but we went back and go to the next slide. We asked if we could have upgrade to option one. So this one is option 1C. You can see it's at 5,200 square feet with a $3.8 million price tag on it. Can't quite read all the things in there, but you can see it is added on to the entryway of the building, that section, which will be coming out towards the parking lot. So option 1B gives us slightly more room, 6,100 square feet with a price tag of $4.1 million. Sure I can make this large. So I'll try to.
Oh, I'm gonna see if I can enlarge it a little bit.
So, let's see.
Do you want me to read the bullets? Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'll try to explain. So the different spaces. So as she mentioned, we're going to have a nurse's office now. So hopefully we won't have to have a partition in there. It's going to be storage space. We have a conference room in this proposal. You can see the principal's office, student support services. So there's several that are named student support services. We haven't identified what each space is going to be, but I can list you the student support services spaces that they need. So we need guidance, speech and language intervention, special education, psychology, tutoring, testing, alternative space, and planning room. And I didn't see it on here because of the way I've got it set up. There is an additional space for an additional classroom. So it's the case that Joyce brought up where we have a class that's too big for just one classroom, that we'll have a space that we can provide that to two classrooms. So if I'm missing anything on this screen, Laura, please, or Joyce, please feel free to discuss any of the options on there.
I think this is the one that the facility committee believed ticked all the boxes of the needs. And met all the essential needs. The first version we got, it actually cut down on storage. So we were ending up with less, robbing Peter to pay Paul in a way, and did not get to at all of the essential.
And as Devin just mentioned, and the biggest reason, one biggest reason for this is to have a pre-K space.
Yes.
So that is included on here, and that frees up our music and art. Currently, we have pre-K in there as well. So.
And all those things listed under student support services spaces, those aren't all new additions. We have some of those spaces already, but they might not be adequate space or might not exist right now. But this did check off all the 6 essential needs boxes.
And again, if you looked at this was 4.1 million as an estimate, and the other was 3.8. it's pretty close, and if we wanted to add that extra space after, like I said, you know, I don't think you're gonna do anything for less than $1 million. So certainly now is the time to do that. And, you know, one of our biggest fears is to do it, spend the money and still not have enough space or have a big enough project. And people say, you know, you spent the money, how come we're still? We're seeing this project is filling, checking off all the boxes, and giving us what we need. So if you go to the next one, you can see the footprint. So you can see the blue section is what would be added on. So that is going to come out from the building and into the sidewalk and the parking lot. One in, I don't know if it's been discussed yet. One thing I was thinking about when I was looking at this is I'm assuming that this is going to include new sidewalk to replace the old. I don't know if we've discussed that or not, but
Have not gotten to that point.
yeah. So you,
CEI, I know they've given us some numbers, and last time they were throwing a number that they thought they would share a little bit in contractors, but do you think sidewalks are in their plan, or is something that's not?
That the issue of sidewalks has not been discussed. New sidewalks has not been discussed, other than the access to the building, like right, the actual entry.
so that where that front section, the entry comes out, so that's going to be, you know, over 60 feet from the current entrance coming out, so it will take up some space into the parking lot. You can see where cars are parked there, where the current parking lot is. Another thing that we have to be aware of is you can see the road on the right side of the building that goes down to the rec fields. We've talked to EEI and they realized that has to be kept open during construction and stuff, so those fields are accessible, and they've said that they will, they have to bring additional stone or gravel in to widen the road so they can, so people have the access that they will. So that is what the impact will be on the building. So facility task force recommendation. So as I said, we recommended the 1B design that we just looked at. Aligned with the facility task force prioritization, so the safe and healthy schools, instructional space it gives us, and it gives us equitable opportunities with the other schools, meaning size of class and that type of thing. So addresses all the essential needs that Joyce gave us earlier. Investment to value add, like I said before, it's more bang for the buck going with 1B over 1C. Obviously, we had bigger projects that they presented us that were not in the scope of this project. Scope of what we were. So project size, timeline, and cost fit into the ARPESR timeline. No additional impact on taxes and long-lasting impact. So brings us to the timeline. So, like I said, this is a tight timeline. So the schedule, submit for AOE concept approval beginning in August 2022. Stakeholder engagement in Franklin, we've tentatively put down August 11th, which is next Thursday, I believe. But we wanted, obviously, the board will make the decision. That's the obviously we'd like to do it next week because we want to have this done before we have our August 16th meeting. So we just need to come to a decision on that. Start full design August, September 2022. Bid documents ready for pricing by mid-November. Generate schedule of values for district review and approval in December. Final construction and permit drawings in February of 2023, so this February. And then permitting, subcontracting, subcontractor selection, equipment procurement. That's all in February as well. Construction to start in April. Needs to be weather tight by November of 2023, and then substantially completed in the summer of 2024. So, known unknowns. So the AOE RFSR application timelines, as Laura said, take 30, 60, 90 days. We don't know how long this will take. Sprinkler fire suppression system, we'll be able to an answer on that. We'll be able to fit that on in an existing structure. Boiler system capacity, I'm hoping with our new boiler system that we can take this on. And then soil compaction stability, hopefully with the building air also, but this won't be a concern, but these are things that we have to get identified before we can move on. Additional information, so budgeting, we're looking at doing a budget, which is a worst case scenario. All-inclusive pricing, temporary admin space, so obviously we're going to be under construction during the school year. So we need to have temporary space for the admin, so that's going to need to be decided. Temporary entrance location, because we're working on the entrance of the building. So we're going to have to locate different entrance for students, parents, faculty. So we want to provide added improvements as efficiencies are found. What we're hoping is, if you've seen in other projects, when we get into it, maybe there's a more efficient way to do it. If that happens, we'll be able to propose improvements, hopefully back into the project, make it value added. Hopefully, if there is unforeseen costs, we'll be able to absorb that cost into the project possibly. And minimize disruptions to the summer program in the school year. Will be during the school year and summer school year, so they will be working to try to minimize any disruptions to those programs. It's back to Laura.
So next steps, if we did continue with this process, would be additional meaningful stakeholder engagement, as we mentioned before. That's a requirement of RFSR. There's a proposal of an informational meeting in Franklin on August 10th or 11th, I think were the dates that we were throwing around. We want to have time to inform the public and then also respond prior to the next board meeting. The Agency of Education, that would be required to submit for concept approval and complete that application. That's the application I'm currently working on. That, if approved, is not something that is required to move forward with. So that's why I'm starting it now. We could then say, no, the board didn't approve it. I'll withdraw the conceptual approval, and that's what we need to do. Then we have a board meeting where there would be some possible action on the 16th of August. And then I would go potentially back to the Agency of Education if that was approved, and then submit for construction approval sometime in the next couple of months.
So now we're at the questions, thoughts, and discussion. Go back to 8 slides.
Yeah. Anything at all? We'll open it up. Don, you mentioned having some questions. Would you like to kick it off?
Oh, sure. I hope we don't meet on a Wednesday the 10th. Somewhere I've seen Thursday the 11th. And I have meetings Wednesday night. So if you go on a Wednesday night, that's fine, but I won't be there. It's obviously Wednesdays, usually VSBA or one like that. Not that that makes a lot of difference, but I want to throw that out. Not a whole lot. I think there's much here. Everybody's done a good job. But there's one comment, and I think I've noted it here. It's been noted a couple of times. And I would just encourage us to be real careful with the statement, no impact to budget or taxes, because that's not true. there is no impact on taxes with construction. But when you add space, you add maintenance, you add heat, you add, maybe even a person. So I know what we're saying, where we're coming from. And the reason I'm telling you this, because many years ago, I was involved with a project where people said the same thing, because they got, Essex is long way from my, so there's not a difference where it was. So I would take that out or clarify that there's no taxes on this construction.
Right.
But year two out of here, if we hire another custodian, if they can, our heat bill goes up 30%, that does have a direct impact. So I think it's better to frame it so people know than to say no. And I relate that back to when people said no local money for football. So just a caution. And if you decide to leave it alone, I'll still vote for it, but I just think that's something. Laura, last meeting when we met with EEI, the fellow gave us a pretty hard number. Bob,
John?
sure, whoever it is, Don. I think that somewhere along the board should certainly talk about that and then go back and look at some of these other things that might occur. Because there are going to things that are going to occur that are going to require money. And I don't know whose responsibility it is to flush out what a temporary entrance might cost us. But I really think we should get some handle on something like that.
So with this contract, it would be no change orders, is my understanding, unless there was some very extreme situation that happened, something of a very large unknown or catastrophic event. But for the most part, similar to the one in Highgate, which is part of one of the perks of the performance contract, which is technically what we're continuing, change orders would really be limited. So I like that as a little, mitigation of liability, but yes, if there was something large, but those entrances and the portable different, we did talk about those, and those are included in this contract. Accommodating those needs would be part of the contract, but we would have to do our best also to accommodate this construction within the building also. So it's a mutual kind of relationship, yeah.
I just think that needs to be clear. Once they give us a price, that's the price. Then they can't come back with things that we might raise between now and the time we agree to it.
And that was one of the benefits really that we talked about 2 years ago of performance contracting, because I remember the MDU project, all I did was go to meetings where we reviewed change orders and we discussed what was necessary and what wasn't. What would the company pay for and what did the district have to come up with more money for? And in this case, they're so far, and I know they will come on the 16th, they're saying if you go with the 1B and it's the agreement is for 4.1, that's their worst case scenario. And all of those things like the additional extra or entrance or stone that's needed is in that. Their hope is that they're going to actually come in lower than that. And
That's what he said.
it's a whole other perspective with performance contracting than the other kind of contractors.
I think it just behooves all of us over the next week or so. Like tonight, the sidewalk thing came.
Yeah.
That can be a fairly expensive item. We want to make sure, where is that?
Yeah.
Is that in that drop dead price? Or is that going to be one of those things, well, that really wasn't part of it, and so we need number 3.
I would echo that with like when I heard we weren't sure on if the sprinkler system could hold or like can that be flushed out before? I mean, that's what they do,
Well,
right? I mean,
Well, the issue with that is the timing of when, there is not a sprinkler system at the moment. The timing of when you work with a fire inspector
To
and you
figure it
notify them of that during the process, apparently it's very specific when you want to make that communication. So they tried reaching out and talking about a proposed project, but then it turned into a much different conversation with an actual fire inspector. So I'm learning about how that process works without being super specific. But yes, they're in communication, they are investigating, but they're not trying to create a mountain out of a molehill at this point either. So if that makes sense. I would say, Don, to your point, the things that are the known unknowns are the reason they outlined those, is those might be the things that could potentially raise the cost. So I would think those would be the things that we definitely would want to try to identify sooner
Yes.
rather than later. I've added sidewalks, but these are, and sprinkler system obviously is one of them. Now, at this point in the process, we really need to investigate that list of items.
But, you know, Julie said it, and I believe it, but, you know, no change orders. They give us a price, and somewhere along the way, work enough contractors and people as, you know, they come to the table if it's hunky dory, then you get $500,000 asbestos removal. That's not theirs, but there are a few others that are there, so, anyway, it's a good process, we'll work through it. But the more information we can give them, so they can give us sooner.
I would like to, you know, I know we're talking about the sprinkler system. I would like to take the 10,000 foot view and also think strategically about this. And I believe that schools that look good or that, you know, have the essentials, et cetera, are really important, and research, you know, tells us that's the case in terms of the effect on children's education, their success, and also, you know, in terms of their pride. And we've been talking about that, how important it is for our district. I also think that it's wonderful that we're doing this money for Franklin, but I think we're being short-sighted if we think that the only stakeholders are Franklin. You know, in the overall picture, $4 million or a little more is of a kitty is being spent on Franklin. And I think we should. I just think we need to acknowledge that and somehow bring the rest of the district in, because otherwise, you know, when you think about it, the fact is, when we went on our tour, it was really clear that Franklin needed more space. That was years ago. I mean, you know, it was, and I mean, part of that, all our schools need help. Highgate, you know, the bond that passed when we first merged, that, you know, I mean, there's a lot of back, what am I trying to say? There's a lot of, what's the word to use when there's
Deferred.
What's that?
Deferred.
Yeah, there's a lot of deferred, but there's also like a real need now. Because, so there's so much need around. I mean, the Babcock building, Highgate, we're making it the White building, Franklin, and all that. And I just think that, you know, I could get into specifics in terms of class size and all that kind of stuff. And really, it didn't seem like we were going up to a third at your place. It seemed like it was more like we gained.
It was a third of the population changed. It wasn't that the enrollment went up.
Oh, okay, because I was trying to figure that out. I think that needs to be a little clearer, because I'm thinking they're doing the math.
No,
But I think that this is a major conversation we need to have strategically. I think we need to do this, yes, because it makes the most sense. And I think we need to have a bigger conversation with the whole population about, and the whole population of our district as to what's coming up. You know, I mean, the fact of the matter is, we've got buildings out there that our kids can't keep going. I mean, that, you know, I don't know. I mean,
We've done a pretty thorough assessment of all of our buildings, and then the state has asked all of us to do a whole survey of it's a facility survey, what it was called, for each of our buildings, because the state keeps trying to talk about bring back construction funding. They also understand this fall we have the PCB testing that will happen in all of our, not all of our schools, many of our schools. And we will have information about that coming.
I know.
So we do have many construction and capital project needs in our district. This one made sense because it fit the criteria and it was small enough. And many of our other needs are so large that the beginning estimate is $12 million, right? So that wouldn't fit within the scope of this. But you're right, we need to share the overall assessment and the, you know.
I think you need to share it with it, because like you said, 4 million fits here, but 4 million could take care of something in another school. It wouldn't be the whole, you know, whole part of it, like Babcock and
So
Swanton.
I think that's a lot of work that the facilities committee does. So I'll kick it over to Peter and Don maybe be able to.
You're absolutely right, Terry, and that's what we deal with every facility need. We have all these needs that we have, and we've looked at all these, we looked at the assessment that I talked about of all the buildings. And to Julie's point, we needed to find something that was critical, like this is with Franklin, that also fits in the cost structure that we're looking at. Bob, if you saw the Babcock building was on here, and we're investigating that. We know that's a higher price tag. We know it's a concern, and we know we have to deal
Right,
with it.
right.
But it doesn't fit with this project.
I'm just saying,
So, but I just want you to realize we are looking at
I
the
know
big
that.
picture.
I know you do. You're the facilities committee. I know that. What I'm saying here is, this is what you're working on to show the public, et cetera. It looks like what you're working on to show Franklin is all I'm saying. And I think that, I understand you've got this big plan, but I think that if we're gonna do this, we need to start working on that, what that big plan is too, because if I were people and I saw this and you started listing what we're doing for each school, if I'm a taxpayer in certain towns, I'm gonna say, okay, but how much? How much here? How much there? There's no dollar signs. Why?
This won't be the last meeting on this project, but we wanted to kick it off in Franklin because it directly affects that school. And that's another question I wanted to ask Laura is, I'm wondering if for next week's meeting, is there any way to have a schematic of what the building will look like from the outside so people could see this is how it's going to change the look of the building? Because Terry brought up a good point. How our buildings look and how makes a big part of the pride and
Yeah.
how kids feel about their school. So obviously, I don't think it's just gonna be thrown together, but it would be nice to have a look because it has a nice entryway now. It'd be nice to keep, that feel.
Don and Rennick looking to make comments. Just to clarify, the meeting that we're looking at holding in Franklin on August 11th, is not just for Franklin residents, it's open to everyone in the district. So
And we did even talk today about the fact that maybe it doesn't have to be in Franklin, that maybe it could be somewhere else other than Franklin.
Like
Because it would be open, we would want everybody to be able, and Julie was gonna send out an email to all of MVSD community. And so maybe, like, if Highgate wasn't under such construction, Highgate would be a central place to have it.
MBU is good.
all right, Don?
Did you want to have a comment or a question?
Yeah,
Go ahead, then I'll-
just a couple things so I can understand clearly. So when you presented the MVSD project and you had like the project history with Highgate, Swanton, and is that construction that's already like been approved and started, so like what we're seeing for now, or is that people?
Those are things that have taken place over the past several years. We wanted to show the work that's been, some of the major projects being done with a variety of funding services.
Okay, so it's not just like ESER 1, ESER 2.
No, some of it is local capital funding that's been in the budget, some of it was bond funding, some of it was fundraised, like the playground equipment, for example.
Okay, and-
So it was a variety of projects.
okay, so then the ESER 1 money that's been allocated, so that's going to salaries, and then ESER 2 looks like about 2/3 of that has already been spent salary contracts. So then the main chunk of the ARP ESER is for this project. Am I understanding that correctly?
About
That-
half.
About half.
So is that the phase 1 allocation, the 5.2 million?
I'm not sure what you're
I-
looking at,
So
sorry.
I'm looking at your ARP ESER public planning template. Can you put-
Oh, okay. Phase 1. Where you see phase 1.
So under section 2, so under section 3, it says federal emergency funding. That's on the MVSD ARP ESER public planning spending template.
So I can tell you where this is identified. This project is identified, I think that might be easier for me, is page 3. It says construction, additional instructional space, safe and healthy operations, 4.1 million, at the bottom of that chart.
Looking at that, can you see that?
Is there a page number on the bottom of that page, or should be?
the attachment you went back to them.
Yep, I'm looking at the same document. Is there a page number?
I'm looking at page 2.
I'm sorry. Okay, so phase 1 and phase 2, we were allocated from the Agency of Education in 2 phases for our RFESR. We now have it all.
Okay.
The federal government did not allocate them with all the RFESR funding at one time, so we only received a partial allocation. We have now received our entire allocation, which is 7.9 million. It was just broken into 2 phases because that's how the state received it.
So then how much of that 7.9 is allocated to,
4.1
okay,
at this point in time, based on the estimates that we have.
is there a plan for the rest of it yet? Or no?
It's in that 40-page plan. I have a shorter version that doesn't have numbers in it, just because it's 40 pages long, the way the state has us put it in. Is it 20% that needs to be
Yes.
spent on intervention based on COVID? We have about, and then we have a chunk that needs to be spent on students who are historically underserved, students with special needs, students from particular populations. And we have basically about 50% is going to the needs of our children who struggle. So whether that's intervention, tutoring, paying the salaries and benefits of social workers that we've added temporarily,
And that's the 1.
curriculum work.
And so that's the 1.5 million of like mandatory set aside allocations that we're talking about. 20%
Yes,
set
there's,
aside.
it's laid out in a very specific way for the state.
Yeah, so the only reason I ask is because I think that, I mean, I've heard a lot of questions asked, what did you do with the COVID? Right, it just comes up all the time, especially when like the budget comes around, what did you do with COVID? So this breaks it down minutely, and then we are putting the biggest chunk towards Franklin and rebuilding that project, which I think is a great project. But I think that has to be packaged in a way that's concise and short and up for some sort of public debate in a way that makes sense so that people can get on board with it. That we don't like get to next budget season and people are like, you had all this COVID money, you did X, Y, and Z, and I didn't understand why. Right? Or like, there's only so much that we can spend on services, right? Or if there's things that, so like it came up earlier in the year that Highgate didn't have enough space for pre-K, and they were like kind of turning people away. Well, like, was that addressed? So that people can address the things that they think, and then we can sort of get like public backing for this plan before we start, and then we're not left like next year's budget. People are like, well, you know, people in Swanton, people in Highgate are not like, well, I'm not behind it. So does that make sense? What I'm trying to say is just present it in a way that it shows what we're doing with the rest of the money and how those needs have been exhausted, and that this has to be used in a way that is a small enough project that we can support.
I
while
think
doing everything
one of the
else.
things we have reported out regularly on how we've spent our ESSER one money in all of our different funds. I don't know that it's everyone is able to connect the dots. There's just so many different funds and it's so complex.
Well,
So
it's-
you're right about the simplified. When I went to the Swanton Enhancement Project, I knew that I was not going to hand them a 40-page, hard-to-read document. So I came up with a color-coded, 2-page bulleted sheet so that you could see all the different strategies that we've done. And that was just with the ARPESER proposal. Because we did do public engagement, you know, and tick those boxes, but I still think we have a lot of communication to do so that more people understand.
That would just be the biggest thing I'd say, is because it's literally gotta be 2 pages that I like post.
Right.
And then people are like, okay, that's what you did with the money, makes sense. Or like, I hear a lot about services, and I know we're pouring all these resources into them. So we have to be able to show we're doing that, and like, hey, this big project, small, it's actually small, but this is where we're putting the money. And I think do that maybe now as opposed to, again, March, if we're gonna be complaining about it.
See, I agree. And when I said it, I'm taking the strategic view, I also meant the long-term view. Because it's the long-term view where people are gonna start saying, wait a second, or it's possible. Because like they wanted to know so much about where COVID was going. And if in the, they hear, I think it's a great project and I think it needs to be messaged a little differently.
Thinking out in the future, so you'll have the additional 1 to 2 classrooms, you have more students than what you anticipate, but the project's also taking up part of the parking lot. So looking in long-term future, if you have more students, you have to use those spaces where you're going to have parking lots that you're putting the parking lot down. So in the future, 4 or 5 years from now, you don't have to worry about putting a bunch of money into the new parking lot.
I think Joyce addressed that at our meeting, last facilities meeting where the school parking lot has plenty of space right now. The only time it's full and overflowing is when we have a concert or something like that, and it'll still be that way. But there is, I mean, I'll let Joyce answer, but I think there's enough open space now.
Yeah, and there's also space that if we needed to, we could go further down in the parking lot if we needed to. But during the school day, the staff literally parks in all the angle parking on the side, and we leave the entire middle open for people coming to the building. At the end of the day, since COVID, we have more parents picking kids up still. So it's busy at the end of the day and pretty full at the end of the day. But I did just want to go back to something we said earlier, because this project is definitely not for the next 20 years. It's one additional classroom. That the design that had the multiple classrooms, this was really designed right for the needs that we have right now, maybe the next couple of years. It's not something that's designed for the next 20. There was a finite amount of money that we were trying to plan for and to project for and design for what we needed right now, for problems that we've had for several years, that we've been as creative as we can, and there just is no more space to try to figure out something creative for. But as far as the parking lot, I think at the beginning they said maybe 6 spaces, and then later on I think they changed it maybe to, I think was it 10 more, or I think 8 or 10, yeah, something like that. So it wasn't too bad.
I was just trying to think of,
Down the road.
down the road.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I personally don't think that you're planning just 1 or 2 years down the road. So you got a classroom that you could break into 2 classrooms. So that's,
Yes, I hope so.
I really do, but I just
I
wanted to make
hope so.
sure that we would be looking into a parking lot project.
Just to what you were saying too, Terry, I think it's important from a budget perspective and a planning perspective. I think this is where, when you chose to engage in a contract with EEI, it was because we needed to start thinking about other funding sources to support this work. There's been a lot of work done. I don't think our buildings are being neglected. Unfortunately, they're still 30-year-old buildings, so it's almost impossible to keep up. So performance contracting was another way to try to approach that, maybe with a long-term lease. We kind of got sidetracked from that because of the pandemic. But then we with the task force refocus. But I do think, the board adding a line in your budget for capital projects and increasing that every year, maybe not enough, but that's an effort also, finding another funding source, increasing repair and maintenance lines. I think you've done a great job in that. Can we do more? Probably. Also looking at the timing of a bond. So it's all those things together that I think from a strategic standpoint that we've been talking about to try to get us to the point where we can do some really significant stuff. The COVID funding has just created another revenue source that unfortunately has a very short time frame. But I just think as we think about going into budget season, I'll just remind you of this conversation where there is a lot of need and we really have to start thinking differently. Gone are the days where we can just go to bond, because we know we can never bond for what the need is, which is probably upwards of 75 to 100 million realistically. So that's just part of the reminder, I think, of we really have to think about all these things as we work through financials.
But we have to get people on board.
Right,
too,
exactly. Yeah,
For the big picture,
right.
not bits and pieces.
So Laura, is it fair, or Julie, you talked about that plan and a lot of that was dictated by the state.
Yes.
So is it fair to say of this art ESSER, we couldn't spend more than, let's say, 4.1 on space? Because of those percentages that are dictated by the state as far
The
as.
percentages are a piece, and then it's the purpose. So, you know, we talk about parking lots. Every one of our schools except Highgate could use parking lot renovation. That would be more than $4 million, but there's no way that that would tick any of the boxes that it's preventing educational loss or related to COVID in some way. When we're talking about adding a dedicated pre-K space and student services spaces and things like that, that falls under the purpose of the RFS. So it's not just the percentages, it's also, again, the purpose of the expense.
So
So we're building some outdoor classrooms, for example,
right.
and those fall under
But
that.
what I'm looking at this project is its space.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of thinking, space is space. It could fall under a COVID purview. So if we wanted to design other space, we could probably somehow justify that it's in reaction to it, it's ESSER eligible.
The challenge is that the space needs that we have in our other buildings are such that it wouldn't, it's not enough, that's enough. That's part of the challenge.
Right.
So part of it is, as you said, the percentage. So we need a dedicated amount spent on those particular services.
Right.
And then we only have a certain amount left to do. So when we did our assessments of all of our buildings, those capital projects were all had high price tags. Even just, we talked about doing an expansion in Highgate and what that would look like, because we know that enrollment has declined, the white building is older, you know, we threw around lots of ideas. That would be more than we have available to us with this funding.
Yeah.
He'll do a better job.
No, I think it's, I took it a different way, maybe.
Yeah.
So we know what we know right now at this point in time when we create this plan, but it is a fluid plan.
Yeah.
We know that we need to have proper time to evaluate what's working and what's not working as far as intervention, tutoring, guidance, BCBA, you know, all these different positions and tutoring we're putting in place. We have put that into the plan for the other 50% and to utilize that through September 24, which is the start of fiscal year 25, and be able to have time to put the things that we need into the budget over the course of the next 2 years. We will utilize the rest of that funding for those things, with the caveat that there is some money for things that probably that we don't know are going to occur yet. We don't know what we don't know, right?
Yeah.
So that's why this money has an expiration of September 24. Students are going to continue to have needs, contracts are going to change, staffing is going to change,
Yeah.
staff is going to increase. So are we aware of that when we wrote this plan? Are we maybe anticipating more intervention or more tutoring? At this point in time, I would say yes, we're using not overly conservative numbers, because I think as a team, I don't know if any of us are anticipating those needs going down before September 24.
Right,
That
and,
kind of
and with the
effort.
time frame for this edition being so tight, I mean, the idea of building on anywhere else is not gonna happen because of time frame too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we've heard a lot of the time frame. So that answered my question. Now, to along the lines of, Terry was saying, and I'll throw this out because I only got one more year on my term, I think, and I'm probably done. But and what my bigger picture is like 20 years down the road. I really think, and I've shared this with a couple board members, and it's radical, but I really think we missed an opportunity when we became the MVSD to really think about our geography. I mean, my vision of it, if I was king for the day, and people weren't so committed to their individual schools, that Highgate would be a true middle school. And we'd fill Franklin and Swanton to our maximum student-teacher ratios. And we draw a line down the middle of Highgate. And the students would flow to Highgate, pre-K through fifth. We go to our elementary schools, and Highgate would be a true middle school, 6, 7, 8. I think, and that's not popular. But I think that would, in a 20-year time frame, we would accomplish everything through attrition. So anyway, I've always wanted to vocalize that when we went through the merger, never got out. People weren't really thinking outside of the box. I still think it's part of a longer, greater conversation that the full MVSD should have. Because I think you're talking multi-millions of dollars in savings. Because we have one less school. And just utilizing their space differently. So, but there are politics involved with that would probably prevent it from ever happening. I don't think my family will be retiring here, but I just see that is the future for the MVSD. So I just wanted to share that because it's interesting. That's why I think adding on to Franklin Elementary School was fine with me. I don't look at it as an addition. Like I want to sell this as the MVSD is expanding. Franklin's not expanding. The MVSD is expanding. We need more space. It doesn't matter where the kids
I
are.
agree.
We need more space.
Who knows, maybe the school choice will really come into play and people in Highgate and Swanton will send their kids to Franklin because they see that.
Right. I just think that there was a, middle school, those kids can afford to travel the most, rather than the little kids. So the closer you are, I just always thought that was a bigger 20-year plan, which would save big bucks, significant millions of dollars. I would assume we would be operating one less school.
On a much smaller scale. I don't disagree with you. On a much smaller scale, we are starting conversations, I think, some with the task force, but also things we've been talking about with EEI as an administrative team is, and the facility directors is, we're never gonna have $100 million, right, to do everything we need to do. So the way we've been doing things is not sustainable, and we have a different population. Our population has changed. We have less students, we have more students in some. So how we use the space that we already have, because building existing space, as we can see, is very expensive. So really starting the conversation to think outside the box with what we have already. How are we using our classrooms? Do teachers need their own space all the time? Or how office space is, like using the locker room as an example. Does that coach actually need that space, or can we share space? And what does storage look like? Thinking about what we already have and how we can repurpose it and reuse it. Just because it's different doesn't make it wrong. Kind of thinking is going to be necessary, in my opinion, because we just won't have enough money to keep building and building and building, like as much as we maybe want to. So on a smaller scale, but similar thinking, I think is going to be necessary.
Okay,
Go for it, Don.
everybody else had their say. I think it's important that people speak. But I just proved something here for myself in the last half hour. I learned this not in kindergarten because I didn't go to kindergarten. I learned in first grade. If you listen long enough, your question will be asked to somebody else. I just want to speak to what Toby said. I'm going to take a few minutes, and if there's a time limit, like 2 or 3 minutes, I have found being on the facilities committee with this project, starting with Chris Shepherd, somewhat frustrating. And part of it is because my background, that doesn't make any difference. But I think, Toby, when you started talking early on, I tried to promote X number of dollars. I think we're talking 2.5 something for Franklin and some for the Babcock building. And I don't blame anybody because I think I heard it from Laura. You know, the agents of ed, I don't think was too well prepared for this. I don't think that people are too well prepared for many things that are going on because they've lost a lot of staff. They're not supported by the legislature. But it did seem to me at one point we could be doing two things. We could do some small things. I know that we've heard, I think, Babcock might be 12, I don't know, 20 million. Well, we don't have to do that much, but there might be some things we could do. But at the same time, I don't think EEI, I think at one point I was told that EEI is just so busy, they didn't even have time to do this stuff. So anyway, we are where we are, and I think it's really good that this is a good project. I think Franklin needs it. And thank goodness we do have ESSER money because I don't know what would happen in Franklin if we didn't have it. I really don't. I don't see the citizens of Franklin jumping up and saying, we want to put 4 million in our building. We have courage. I don't see the other towns. But I want to come back to Remick. Remick really got me thinking. You know, maybe I think too long term. In fact, I've been told that by my family. But I just wonder how this is going to impact our budgets going forward. Because word gets out, I don't know about you, but I don't think I could find 5 people in Swan that know what ESSER money means for schools. And we need those people because they're going to take a vote in March. And that's why I mentioned earlier, we need to watch out what we say about taxes. But I had planned to say it tonight, but I didn't got me going. And Terry, I think this board really needs to make a commitment, and Toby's going to stay on because he's a good man, go see us through. We're going to have some discussions about facilities in the next 2 or 3 years that will be painful. And whether we put it in the budget, we're going to have some articles on the budget. I know that bonding is a dirty word in some places, and it may be here. But this is only the beginning. And you know, I like EEI. I'm glad to give them a try. But they are a business to make a profit. I think they've probably done just what we've asked. But I feel we really, little by little, through our own inaction and the Agency of Education and the unknown about ESSER, we're kind of in a corner now. We can't say, let's take $1.5 billion and do something at the Babcock School. The time is not available. We don't have the staff. So we go with this, but I have 2 more years on the board after this one. And I will keep bringing up, we need to make sure that we address the concerns of the other schools. You know, MVU had a project. It could have been, probably should have been more. But as good as that building may appear, when you get into the innards of that building, there's a lot of money needed there. I sleep better at night now knowing that Jason is going to do the locker room, so they're not an embarrassment. But that's only a small part. So, you know, we go with this, but I don't know how we get the public to be proactive with this. I'm not criticizing the public. I see myself as part of the public, but I just think if we're not really aggressive in our promotion of this, I was even thinking maybe we need a second meeting on this project, maybe Swanton or Highgate. Then I'm thinking, yeah, if there are only 3 people come, then it looks like they made us go out another night for 3 people. But I think there's a lot of chance for backlash on this. I think that's it. So I could ramble on and we'll stop right there, but we need to go forward. But I think the best thing we can do is make sure that when we're talking with EEI, we get stuff tied down as tight as we can. Because this is what I see as potential. We get about halfway through the project, September 24 is around the corner. We got an extra $1 million here. We have to spend it or lose it. And all of a sudden, there are things that we found in Franklin we didn't know about. 2.5, it became 4.1, 5.3, and then there really be backlash. So
We can't do that. Can't be done. You're right.
so, okay, that's it for me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I just add something? And my big concern too is looking forward at all this. You know, 4.1 million seems okay, feasible. but but when you spread out to the other communities, Highgate's gonna be double that, and Swanton's gonna be quadruple that because of the population. And I'm just really worried how we're gonna get people to support a $20 million, budget. It's really hard, but I don't want to see us doing everything in Highgate and Franklin and not Swanton because Swanton's too expensive. That I think we really have to keep in mind as we go forward,
And
that we
MVU.
don't take the low hanging fruit all
And
the time.
MVU is like times 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just say, Terry, I think it's important for the board and for the public to know that the board's acting in a way where we value all of our resources equally. We are one district. It's a grand list of projects because we have needs in every building and we are just sorting it through to do the ones we can now and the ones we're going to do in the future. And the best way for us to get the support of the community when it comes budget time is to have schools that are doing a good job and have the boards of community trusts. And so that's on us and our administrative team and our teachers and everyone else who's involved to really step up to the plate and trust. So
It's also how much it is.
there are dollars involved too.
Yes.
I know that sounds good and I agree with you, but there also is the price tag.
So yes. We'll need to sort those out as they come. We need to have school, we need to have good buildings for our kids, so.
I agree.
Terry, what we need is a music man.
Yeah.
It sounds like being yeah.
Any other
Music man,
discussion?
you ever see the music man?
My
Play
favorite
the music man?
Yes, it is a beautiful musical.
Okay, so who wants to nail down the date and time for the stakeholder engagement meeting and location? Are we able to determine that tonight? Is there any outside work that needs to be done first?
Well, it sounds as if the 10th won't work for Summit Board. That's also the night that we have our board development goals meeting.
Okay, so August 11th it is.
August 11th, I think fits. I don't know that I'm available that night, but that's okay.
And what time? We're hoping for public, we should do 7 o'clock for those. Is that
I think we should, I think we need to be respectful. Not everybody can go over the
And that Zoom possibility really helps too.
yes, if we can get a remote option. That would be great. And then in terms of location,
We had talked about Franklin just because Highgate is under construction.
Okay.
MVU, it's the bigger space, but they also have, well, the roof project's 90% done, but they also have everything, library is every, so they don't actually, the library is not available. It might, be, but it's, could be the MVU library.
Julie,
Yes, sir.
could we have it up in Franklin, like indicated, but maybe have a space set up like at the Swanton complex with Zoom and publicize that if you want to be involved in it, that there'll be someone at the Swanton complex.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I could go, I'll go in Franklin, but I kind of like Don's idea, and if no one else would be willing to, I'm willing to go, I could go to the complex that night and watch with them.
It's kind of where everything
I'm happy to
happens.
do it too, but we need pictures. You can't just see it on the overhead and everything. Like we need printouts or something so people can actually
Oh,
see it.
printout of the PowerPoint presentation.
Or,
the
no,
design.
or the, the bigger designed. I mean, I think that's important. That's one of the ways you get people to buy into stuff, show them how good it's gonna look.
So, did,
Yeah.
is there a big screen in the Swanton Elementary Library? Because I know, I was talking about MVU and I saw like 12 huge screens, like taller than me. coming here. Yeah. I mean, I could do it, we could do it at the elementary school too, right? I could meet at the central library.
I will check. I think the floors are being done this week.
Oh, all right.
So
okay.
those are the things that I need to, the town village complex is obviously an option, but I would have to see if it's available. And then we would have to make sure we had staff there to set up and do that. But the school would be easier in some ways, because I also don't expect, 100 people. So I don't know that we need the village complex if the library is available in one of our other schools, right? So we can investigate that aspect.
I'm not opposed to doing that. So if we want a place in Swanton, I could just report to Swanton.
Given the cafeteria and,
So,
And have you where we can
alright,
hear.
so we'll go with August 11th, 7 o'clock in Franklin. There will be a remote option, and we're investigating a location in Swanton to be kind of a gathering point to join remotely. And we'll get information on when we nail down the location.
and maybe we can get all of the message boards in the area to publicize this.
So if you don't mind, that company. coming
Yeah,
back.
that's fine.
Including the one at MVU, which is the manual, but even something there.
Yeah, if we can't get Swanton Elementary, we can probably get MVU.
You know, I was thinking a message, if we even for Swanton Elementary, if we could put something on that board,
Well, the board,
on the
That we
boards
wanna
that,
replace.
there's
We
this
can do one.
meeting at 7 o'clock, you can go to Franklin, or you can go to the, wherever you want.
So it also sounds like there's a lot of difference in the presentation. Does the task force want to meet between now and then also to develop what their vision is for that? Or,
I think we have it.
I thought there was only minor tweaks, right? Like,
I guess I didn't hear that.
Oh,
Toby,
I
how you
thought-
from Terry? I was thinking Terry was thinking it's kind of
we're
the
gonna
wrong
have big
approach.
big blueprint.
oh.
I'm
yeah,
talking about a
Terry-
presentation to give. Are we okay with an abbreviated version of this or?
I didn't see anything major, do we want to start over and rewrite it? Sure, we can sit here tonight, we can do it, but is it as good as it's gonna get? I think it's as good as it's gonna get. I would ask that you consider those tax statements, but that's up to the.
Oh, yeah, I heard that. I thought there was like other comments to this. Okay.
I don't know, I think what I heard was, we're here and now, we may feel good about it, we may not feel comfortable about some things, but let's draw a line, so going forward, everybody understands that this is the beginning of construction. for the,
Right.
MVSD. And I think work through the, you work through the money that helps, but, we just need to,
So on the 16th, there'll be something on the agenda to decide whether we go forward or not.
Yes, that's good. Why you wanted to do this meeting and then have the informational and then
one
have,
of the facilities committee, and I asked if we could do something tonight. They really think it probably takes this long, but I'm glad we did.
Yep.
Because otherwise, to go in on the 16th and try to get hold on this. This is good. Thank you, Laura and Julie, for putting it together. And Peter. Anybody else?
Any other closing comments, thoughts on this topic?
The good news is this is exciting. We're starting the process. Not just the bits and pieces like flooding in Highgate, but really starting, some major stuff.
So Laura, you said EEI is available on the
Yes, today was today wasn't the only day they couldn't do. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so more to come on that. We'll have the public meeting next couple weeks, and we'll have this again on our agenda for our next meeting. All right, moving on. We'll now switch to the Board Development and Goals Committee. Provide an update here.
I'm just gonna start and then Devin and Joanne are gonna take over and explain things, but one of the things that has just cemented in my mind, because I was gonna apologize. I think our committees, my committee for sure, I'm not sure we sent out the notes of the retreat to everyone. We might have, it's, I don't know if we did it with, like with the structure together. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time finding words tonight, but we didn't do it with all of it together. Like I think we did bits and pieces instead of a comprehensive package to you all. And so from here on out, I'm going to really strive as our committee leader to make sure that we send it out ahead of time and not the day before the board meeting, which I think that happens too. And so that's a commitment I'm gonna make as we go forward to keep you all more involved. And I think it'd be really helpful if the facilities committee could do that too, so that we do this before the board meeting, just to have a chance to look at some of the stuff. Okay, thank you. So we had a great meeting. Do you want to go, Devin and Julian? I don't know how involved you all want to get.
Okay, so our committee got together to kind of debrief after our retreat. I sent out a document I quickly looked up today, and
Yeah, thanks.
sorry, some of you probably didn't have a chance to read it over. Points that our committee had talked about. Primarily talking about some of the goals that were the goals we wanted to accomplish, the things that members spoke about wanting the board to improve upon. You know, first was having more time for open discussions during board meetings. You know, the discussion we just had on the construction project, I think is what we're all looking for. And so, all right, got one, but how can we do that going forward? And then organizing our topics around that central why, so we know why we're talking about what we're talking about. And you know, we talk about a lot of things that are all important. We don't always then, you know, map that back to our purpose. And so it can feel a little all over the place sometimes. I sent out that graphic that the committee had worked on and finalized, and I think it was an attempt at that so that we can see how everything traces together. We want to reduce some of that feeling that we're just making a whole bunch of motions with no discussions that pass unanimously, and that's how we spend our entire board meetings, which is how the beginning of today went. And so we'll have a proposal on what we might be able to do with that to free up some time for the bigger discussions. And you know, at this point, we'd like to get students and staff back into these meetings. It's been a couple of years now, COVID, we haven't been able to do that, so that's another thing we'll make time for that. And have that time to, you know, connect and understand what's going on in the individual buildings the way some of us became used to it when we had our smaller single school districts. More closely. We talked about just improving general information sharing, so board members are up to date on things they're interested in, and then providing the admin team with a structure for their updates, just so they feel a little more supported and have guidance from us, what we're looking for, and some structure from the board, so that we are focused on what we've identified as the key goals and objectives. So what we talked about, and this is definitely a proposal that will be a bit new, and we're happy to, you know, tonight I think we'd be looking for maybe just the general okay to try it out and see what happens. You know, we talked about creating a separate abbreviated board meeting for those items that are really routine, where there typically isn't any discussion, and the votes are unanimous. We could put all of those into one single meeting, a shortened meeting where we wouldn't even need everyone to attend, we would just need a quorum. And then free up these main meetings, these longer meetings for the discussion topics that we just have. So we can give a half an hour to something, you know, and really have the in-depth conversations. So in those shortened meetings, we would only need 5 of us to be there. And that would mean we, you know, there's the chair plus 4 more, we have 9, so we have 2 groups of 4, and we could come in and get meetings, take care of the routine items. The idea there, knowing that sometimes there's discussion that's unanticipated by myself as I put agendas together, would be that everyone would be notified ahead of time of what's on those shortened meetings, and if you feel that it needs some discussion, then there's the opportunity to move those to. So we'll have to do that in advance. Any thoughts on that first piece of it?
Now, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but at MVU, if our meeting was at 6:30, there would be a meeting at 6 o'clock for those who wanted to come. Now, it was a little different than this because we pretty much focused on facilities, we thought. Well, I'm gonna tell you, we didn't stay there. Everything was up for grabs. If somebody had heard that there was something wrong with the athletic fields, or some kid had missed the bus, I'm not saying we want to get him there, but I'm saying it was supposed to be facilities. So our meetings may not have been effective, but the concept is a good one.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if, as I read this at my lunchtime, thank you, I had a late lunch today, so it was great. I was thinking 30 minutes for all of those kind of mundane things. If we want to start meeting at 6, if we do, and then at 6:30, we get into the beef of the meeting. But just a thought.
Yep, I think that's the structure we talked about because, it's not an extra day that people have to plan to come. We just have that come half hour early, get through those topics and then have the rest of the board join for the meeting. We do want those to be 2 separate meetings. Primarily, I'm thinking about the folks who may watch us on local access later on, so that they can choose to tune out that first part if they choose, and then have a separate meeting that is more focused on the discussion topics, which is probably interesting for folks to watch.
So are you proposing the, like you said, we'll only do that once a month now instead of every meeting?
Yes. That would be the idea. Yeah, and so initially, the goal, the ultimate goal, I don't know if we get there, would be that we're able to focus ourselves enough to do one longer full board meeting per month. We're not going to start that way. I don't know if that's achievable, so we'll stick with our 2, but throw in our half hour, and if it goes well, maybe we're out earlier on these 2 long meetings, or maybe we just dive more deeply into something. That's right.
Can I add something to that? Because we were thinking that instead of having the 2 board meetings, eventually we have more robust committee meetings. And also what I started this with in terms of we'd be able to more comprehensively communicate with others too, between the board meetings, instead of just having that 1 week in between.
Good start.
Devin, I get a lot of questions at this time of year from the principals and about what they want and what reports are. We talked a little at the retreat about, when we're in Highgate, do we focus on Highgate students and Highgate presentations, and we just have other principal written reports accepted? And that maybe the board's interfacing with principals is at their meeting for their school, and then perhaps they sign up for a committee. I don't know if that is another step, so.
It is. It's the
you know.
second section of. Sorry. I
I'm
don't know if I
sorry.
sent this to you. Sorry. Yeah, the second piece is updating that administrative
Yeah.
report process that we use. And as Julie said, so if we were doing this tonight, if we were on this, then Yeshua would have an extended period, and maybe students and staff from Highgate would have the opportunity to be here, and we dedicate our in-person meeting time to the Highgate, the kids and the staff and the goings on of the Highgate building. The Franklin and Swanton elementary reports would just be written reports. We accept those in the other meeting. It puts, the trade-off here is moving things out of our meeting means the board is committing to doing more of the reading outside of meetings to stay informed today. That is the trade-off we would be making in order to free up time for some of those other things. We talked a little bit about Toby's proposal around the 3 E's, which we kind of ran a little bit. Around that just being a pretty good structure for some of the board administrative reports, highlighting those goals of high expectations, enthusiasm for learning, and desire for excellence. And so we could build that into a recommendation or a request to our administrative team for the simplify and streamline those reports and make them more easy to put together and more targeted on some of those areas. Any comments, questions about?
That sounds good. I don't, the only thing is that, and I'm sure we would try to make it equitable.
Right.
To give each principal the, as close as we can.
Sure, yeah.
Amount of time to have their day.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea of, maybe, yeah, just really doing requiring us to do our homework and reading the report. For the board, I think it's more efficient use of the report.
No, Devin, I would hope that we make certain that MVU administrators, we've been talking about the elementary, but then hopefully every month we hear from the MVU administrators, we have new principal coming on.
So under this structure that, you know, we're at MVU 1 and 4, just like the others, so that would be their time would be.
If that's what we're gonna do, but you know, it's a big operation. Maybe 1 in 4 works, let's see how it works. There was another thought here with, are we going to stay, what model are we staying with? We're gonna be in Highgate next. We're gonna stay here twice.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna move on to some other.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not a fan of that, but that's all right if that's what the board wants to do. Getting into the different school buildings, I think sometimes it's really important, but
Does that mean that if we're doing that, then it's still like 2 times Highgate and 2 times one thing? Kind of like 1 and then it changes.
It would still be 2. So August, we're here in Highgate. September is at MVU, both meetings.
So does that mean that for that month, that for instance, like we're hearing from just Highgate twice?
No, we would only need to do that in one of the 2 meetings. We would have the option to do it in 2. So I, you know, I put agendas together. I don't know if it's a detailed principal or one time and then students the next, or if it's you know, one meeting is the principals and then we have the full other meeting for some of our other topics that we as a board prioritize.
where do the special, where do we see the special ed director earlier?
Right. Yeah, we're still gonna need to do that too. So that's why, you know, we can't just go to Highgate and just talk about Highgate things. We're gonna have to have, you know, multiple times a year, hear how the whole school district is doing in terms of different things, but it allows.
Why don't we loop them in the rotation, but have it at MVU, because then you get the MVU more, it's bigger school. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, we'll work on that. Julie and I have a meeting tomorrow morning to start trying to map all that out. So it's good to hear these comments. Things that we
So-
make sure we don't miss.
One thing I would ask though is that whatever time we reserve for like Highgate or something that students, principal, but also like other faculty.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear more from like various teachers, 1st, 6th, you know, 11th grade, and then, you know, coaches and stuff. I'd just like to see more of what's going on in schools and just provide feedback about problems, concerns, and just hear it.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's you know, I think that's one of the things that was loud and clear during our retreat as we talked, and so the hope here is to free up the time to be able to do exactly those things.
So would you consider that if we come to Highgate twice, do we hear it from the principal one of the times and then maybe bring in a central office person one of the times?
Yeah.
I mean, I like that, but I don't need to hear from you twice.
Yeah, no.
You don't know.
Yeah, that's definitely a way we can do it, because, you know, it's we're still meeting on behalf of the whole district, so they've got lots of things to talk about, fit them in regardless of. Yeah. The last thing on here, Julie, are you able to share?
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you wanted me to.
maybe should have left this, kind of the why of all these proposals here, in addition to that goal. So what we attempted to do was organize some of the items that have come up as priorities for the board, all of our goals, plus all the other community engagement and various things that come up. Try to organize them around that central vision, which is next on our agenda, and we haven't really nailed down wording yet. Concept, I think, is there. That portrait of a graduate that had community input is really the central theme, which, if accomplished, school should be giving kids the opportunity to have success, regardless of any path they choose to pursue. Which I think is what that portrait of a graduate gets at. And so, what we really want to do as a general rule in the longer board meetings to keep ourselves on task and to stay focused on the central goal is to tie all the agenda items back to that. And so this is kind of that web that our committee was able to put together and agree upon. We think we hit the major topics, and definitely open to input on this. But it covers kind of four big areas. Continuous improvements, the big one. We're on that continuous improvement plan. We know our goals are around student proficiency in reading and math. We also have let's look at that for that section. Personalized learning plans is really a way to achieve that. We don't want that to be lost, so that's its own section. And then we have parental and community involvement, which gets back to the personalized learning plans. I think there's a desire of the board to really emphasize those personalized learning plans. We're using those tools, maximizing the effect of those. And then we have the community involvement related to just budgeting and our advocacy and various things we talked about. And then the safe, efficient, and welcoming facilities, which we spend a lot of time on today, and continue to spend a lot of time on in the future. So those are kind of the four big areas. And to me, the map just really helps visualize how we're impacting that initial central goal. And so the idea would be to try to focus our agenda items around those things, put together a plan over the next 12 months that allows us to hit all of those topics. So this is why it's another good organizational tool, just to make sure we get everything in and that we're doing it in a meaningful way to try to advance the goals. And then obviously some other things will come up along the way. So generally we want to stick to these items. Something goes wrong and needs board action, which is fine for it. That was the I think that's everything we talked about, Terry and Joanne.
So one of the things we did talk about was our own school board learning and developing. I think that's one of the things that we got out of the retreat. So just, wanted to bring that back up, and if there's anything specific that the board is looking to learn or to develop on, don't hesitate to send us an email, and then, or Julie, and if it means that we need to invite Phil to come back and not wait a full year, not just do this in July, but maybe do this in 6 months, or if it needs to be sooner, just let us know. We ask our teachers to continuously learn. We need to listen.
Joanne, I'm not sure I heard you, not because you didn't speak, but my very concentrated stuff. Did you mention Phil Moore?
I did, just if the board wanted to invite him to come back, if we want,
I will just leave it there. I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, and we were gonna discuss that further at our next meeting, but I think it's great. I really do. And if everybody seems like they'd be okay with that, that's even better. And we're still working. I'm so glad you brought that up. We're also still working on the statements here and trying to wordsmith some stuff that we'll send out to you all after we discuss it further. Especially those E's.
No, is this the portrait of graduate that remember we'd seen one at the end of last year.
It's the same one. It's coming up again here in a couple. I think we'll.
Okay, so that's another one.
No, it's the same. It's
Yeah.
It's the same one.
These circles are not the portrait of a graduate,
Right.
but it's the portrait of a graduate is the center.
Got it. So that portrait of graduate's the center, and these are the other stuff of like, how do we make that happen?
Yes.
Okay, and then our vision statement though, fits in.
It needs to tie into the portrait of a graduate, but it'd be a one liner, something snappy.
Something snappy is a good way to put it.
You've already snapped it. Something easy to remember. Snapping easy to remember. I think you got it. So we said it.
So, if folks are willing to try all this, I would propose maybe with our September meetings we start, with a abbreviated meeting there and shape the agenda for the next 2 this way, and we'll wrap up August as usual.
Which school is up in September?
That is MVU. Yeah. What I want to be able to tell, and I'm sorry that I asked in the middle of your presentation about your very next bullet. I apologize. But it is starting, people are coming back from vacation and they're starting to say, so do I write a report for the 16th? And I said, I don't know. So I have encouraged people that perhaps for September, they submit written reports that summarize the summer. And that's where we go, and then we start with the more in-depth conversation around MVU. We have some other things that we can kick off with when we look on our calendar, Devin. Hearing about, we definitely have central office things to do as well. So I'll work, I wanted to make sure I was able to give the principals the right message of how to spend.
Let's not ruin their back to school by asking for something else.
I think we can ease
You
into
got
it.
more
a little
important
bit.
things to do than fill the board with what to do. Then it kicks in.
Oh, it's kicking in.
And we're trying to make it so that the principals have less work to do and just, be able to come with the stuff that's, that they want us to know, as opposed to, I don't know what. Sometimes we're not very clear on what we want to know.
Right. So at this point, I don't think we need any action at our next meeting. We likely will just to schedule a meeting for one of our 2 September meetings.
One thing we talked about in past meetings, now that we're in the back to school, each school is being able to actually see the building. So I don't know if we're gonna we can schedule tours before or after. I'm sure they want to show off the building that they've done in the summer, but we haven't been in it for a year. So
I believe part of the plan, Julie and I talked about was doing a tour of Peggy on the 16th. Yeah, since most of the HVAC work will be. And we painted some doors, and I'd be happy to share with you. About that.
Is there any possibility, since we're gonna be in Franklin next Thursday night, if anybody wants to come on our building? There with your this person, is that too much?
The only thing next Thursday is they're doing the main hallway, and so we would have to go outside and go in every room from the outside. But we
I was
can-
only thinking we probably won't be back to Franklin for a while.
It's November.
That's kind of late to tell us what opening a school. or something.
Cool, that'll be all fixed, right? November, all the work will be done, if it happens. Well, could remodeling be done?
a year.
That's 2024.
I thought it's mass.
She just meant the floor will be done.
No,
2 years.
No, 2 years.
I'm saying that they're stripping and waxing the floor, so it'd be hard to walk around the building.
And I was thinking, oh, it's gonna be helpful.
Well,
Your
I'm just looking
husband
for a
thinking that.
general agreement to form agendas this way, and then we'll have to go on schedule.
You know, email said it's some great ideas.
Yeah, I know. Well, tell me what the terrible ones are.
I liked it, Devin. I thought you and whoever did it did a great job, but there was one that I would espouse for quite some time, and that is a goal of having one meeting per month. Terry probably knows this, but the research basically says fewer, shorter meetings keep your people engaged. If this was a bank or I owned a corporation, I might meet with you once every 3 months.
Right.
But if you're elected by the public, if the public's your constituent, you really need to make sure you can actually, that's a long ways away. I might not even be on the board that we put out the one meeting every 2 months.
It may never happen.
I was gonna say,
But that was
we
the
keep
only thing
saying
when I
it.
read through it, kind of like, where's he coming from? with this? I
It
think
is
it's-
tricky.
I think it's a
I
really good
agree with
job.
you, Don, especially if we have a shorter business meeting, but I think it will take some time to get people comfortable and make sure that everybody's getting the information that they need. That's what, we want to be able to do.
I'm just thinking of this citizen that has to be in his or her bonnet, and they say, well, I got 2 shots this month, and then we have one only one day, but that's way in the future, but I like it. I commend you, and I do think that the idea you're gonna not stop filters.
Next on our item was the vision statement, possible action. I don't know, Terry, if we're.
Oh, this
wanna
was
talk about
the
it,
slow
or
reveal,
we're
huh?
not there yet.
It's a slow reveal. You're teasing with that first part. It's up to you, Devin.
I think we had a bunch of ideas that were in the same vein, but not really.
Okay, so we should
on
wait,
point,
you think?
so I think we should wait.
Okay.
Put that on future agenda.
Yeah.
Don't air your dirty laundry.
That's
This is vision statements. So I thought you brought up a good point about we need to have that, whatever we come up with, we need to have it out there, and all the board members need to know what it is, and
Right.
putting it on the agenda each month, so we focus on that.
Yeah.
Short and snappy.
Keep it visible and top of mind.
And I think it's really important too that we always come eager to learn and all the things we talked about. Excited. Toby's falling asleep.
Yeah.
You're agreeing.
All right, we got a couple
I
things left.
Exactly.
We have portrait of a graduate next, looking for action on this.
So we did the presentation last May and but we wanted to have some time for people to sit with it. We had a lot to do in our last meetings. And so I would love to have the board adopt this so that then we can move forward with our vision statements and start publicizing it. This is not the visual, okay? This is the automatic thing that comes out of a computer. Our next step would definitely be to have students work on, different visuals that might be productive and map our vision and have that come to the board as well. But I want to open school with, these are our portraits. This is the feedback we got from our students, our community, from our teachers. And this is, we're centering our work as a district around these essentially values for our children. So hoping to get a motion to accept them.
All right, anyone like to make a motion? That next page is,
I'll make it.
Terry is a first to accept portrait of the graduate. That's written and reviewed.
So just real quick, are we just accepting what's the one from May?
Yes.
It is?
That's the one that we,
And just the verbiage, so the visual and all that.
the visual, no, but the identified priorities and the language has been through a 2-year process of gathering the input, and then the administrative team worked really carefully to narrow that language and to wordsmith it so that it aligned with our priorities.
But the main topics, right? I mean, that's
For a second? Don's a second. Any discussion?
So I don't know if this is a question or a comment, but so these are obviously great. Will there be a class or a project that once the student finishes the classwork project, the box will be checked off to say, I don't know, I'll just use effective communication as an example. I know we have science fair, we have history night, so students need to speak to the public, they need to present their project. So in order to be able to check off that they're graduating with this ability, they will have to have fulfilled certain things, like,
I would say yes, what I started to do, not as a separate thing. What we have are graduation proficiencies in every content area, and then we have broad, general ones around communication and collaboration, things like that. Those proficiencies map to these portrait of graduate characteristics. So we have, and I can share that I can share that in a future. And I haven't even shared it all with the admins, but we can take our high school graduation proficiencies and map them to each of these different criteria. So as a student, I'm demonstrating, leave it to Ren. I'm demonstrating one of those pillars by coursework, by apprenticeship, by my, whatever flexible pathway I might be on, but I'm demonstrating those in my school experience. Yes.
Other questions, discussion?
Notice empathy is used,
Mhm.
and obviously it's really needed. Wondering how we teach. Yeah, I guess to me it's not something you can teach in a school day. It's something that has to be.
It is woven into our social emotional learning curriculum. So we do have, we're doing work this whole year with our teachers to take those competencies that we worked with Castle on. And it's not like a separate curriculum. We're going to have, it's woven into this math lesson. A great example of that is one around persistence that happened in a 5th grade math lesson, where the teacher took a minute to talk about how important it is to persist when things are difficult and to know when it's too hard and when you have to push through. And the students were able to talk about that for a little bit. And then that was a part of the lesson. So our teachers are getting professional development in that very thing. And there are graduation proficiencies that actually get at ethical understanding of citizenship, things like that. So, and I don't have that map in front of me, but that's a deep discussion that the admin team had. But empathy is something that came up very strongly from our community, that we want responsible, empathetic, caring, perspective of other people. All of those things were very strong. So we had to have them.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving portrait of a graduate as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstentions, motion carries 8-0. Final item on the agenda. Other updates, Ag Advisory Committee update. Donald, is that something you'd like to do?
First, I want to defer to the young lady who attended the meeting with me. That's what the email said. Please make certain of the young lady that attended the meeting with us. And she did take the lead, actually did a great job. So you want to share it? I'm not take the comment.
Well, so Dawn invited me to the ad committee. It was a review. It was a review of when we had the presentation. Just touched on the same comments of the class structure. We met the 2 new teachers in the department, which we're very excited. talked about some science classes. I guess so one of the comments I had for them was a little concern about the students that had signed up for the classes if they were under the impression that they would be getting a science credit, being that Mr. Wild was no longer teaching the classes. But Dan Palmer did look into it, and he said that those students were fine. They were not looking for that class to count as a core science class. So had some communications with Dan about also, just wanting to be involved in hoping that we can continue to be invited to the meetings.
I spoke with Dan yesterday. I know you have a comment, but he wanted, he's at the VPA leadership. They are planning on meeting in August again, and you will be calling the meeting and setting the agenda. I think he's waiting for Jim to get back to him about the right dates. And we'll be Joe, Katie, and Dan are meeting regularly. Again, we hired a third teacher today, so that was a good thing. So yes, definitely want to make sure that we have, if Joanne is the rep, I don't know, Don, if you're gonna defer to Joanne, but we'll make sure. I think that's a great addition.
No, I think it's important. I mean, it came up after a meeting and I talked to Devin and said, I'm willing to go, but I have no authority to do anything. And then I thought about it and I thought, it shouldn't be just one board member's interest. And her family, Joanne and her family, they've been very interesting culture. It was really good. The enthusiasm there was amazing from the two new teachers. And I know there's a long road ahead of them because they're coming through a very specialized program. It's going to take them some time to get their licenses and everything. I really, when we talked about, Julie, what you had indicated, that there are funds there to help them take their coursework. Because they're going to be working full time, they're going to be studying too. I really like the fact that Joanne took the lead. I think you contacted Dan and Jen and got some clarification. Summer times are really tough times when you're hiring. Because here, these young people, they're eager to go. They're going to start teaching next day. I mean, the enthusiasm. But there are a lot of things that have to happen before class. So I thought it was a good meeting. Some other issues came up. They were kind of side issues. I don't think they need our attention. Really pleased to have another meeting and the administration's on board. I think that I see Jim back there, but I'm not going to ask him to speak. That's not my job. I think we're spoken for him. But I think to have the board kind of just there, if the administration feels comfortable to do it as an advisory thing. And if the administration at some point says we don't want any board members there, then I'll stay home. But it's kind of fun. I thought we see a program that's struggling. With what it did with them. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. Thanks, Don. All right, future agenda items. We'll talk about board development. We'll also continue to talk about the construction project in Franklin. Stakeholder engagement meetings coming up.
We have the continuous improvement plan slated
Right.
as well.
Two. Yes, right.
Possible for September, if it works, I'd like to have update from the SROs. Security member, I brought it up. So if that's possible, to add to it.
We definitely want to have a security conversation. Don't know whether we would have the SROs do that presentation,
As long as we just have
but
a
we
conversation.
wanted to
about
have
it.
that. We promised you we would have that in executive session so we could get into a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
So we'd like to do that.
I could almost attend.
Yeah, we can just have some sort of discussion.
I
about
mean,
that.
anybody could attend their meetings. Follow it.
Very good. I've got those down as notes. Future board meetings, we will have a stakeholder engagement meeting regarding the use of the ARPA funds and the Franklin construction project, August 11th, 7 o'clock in Franklin. Elementary school, there will be a remote option, and we're looking into a location in Swanton where we can have that meeting set up remotely. It's just a centralized gathering spot. Our next goals committee meeting is August 10th, 6 o'clock. That is held virtually. And then our next regularly scheduled meeting, possible action on this one. August 16th here at Highgate Elementary School, currently scheduled for 6:30. Start tonight at 6. Open to changing it to 6 for next time if that's what you would like. Thoughts? Anyone wanna make a
Do you
motion?
want to start at 6 o'clock, or we're gonna wait till September, or we're gonna do it 6 o'clock here next time?
That's the question. So September, we'll kind of do that new structure with a separate meeting. The question is, we want our regular scheduled meeting to start at 6 next time like it did this time.
And there was 6 works for me because we were talking about 202. So I would think we definitely want to start by 6.
Okay, so anyone like to make a motion to change the time to 6 o'clock for us?
I'll make the motion.
So we make the motion to start at 6 o'clock. Jen is a second. All right. Discussion on that.
We're at 5:30.
I think we should do it as part of the meeting since it will be.
Yeah, we have to warn it.
Here.
So
Yep.
there'll be a quorum of us.
Join the shows.
Letting know the time will be, but
So 6,
Just-
is 6 better than
Oh, no, I'm just
5:30
saying,
or
like,
4?
as long as I get here a bit late.
All right. Discussion on that. Okay, those in favor of starting our next meeting at 6 o'clock, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries 8-0. So
Can I ask a question?
just a second, Terry.
Okay.
All right, so our next meeting will be August 16th here at the Highgate Elementary School Library at 6 o'clock. Yes, Terry.
Can we change our development meeting until August 9th instead of August 10th? Would that work for you guys or not?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the primary day.
It's fine.
Okay. Would it work for you, Jen?
Okay.
Bennett?
I have usually Tuesdays are free.
Oh, okay.
I could try to.
All right,
I'll
let's,
send out an email.
okay,
later.
well,
Thanks.
officially August 10th. If it changes, we will
Okay, perfect.
warn it
Thank you.
with a different date.
Thank you.
All right, it's time. I'll set up the meeting, or a motion to adjourn. So Peter's first. Second. Rennick's the second. Favor? Say aye.
So
Aye.